Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Conservation Farming Unit program, which is all brought to you in a partnership with the Farm to Market Alliance. I am your host for this show. My name is Rita Malwita, and I'm not alone because something as broad as farming needs to be discussed with someone who knows, and in this case, Dr. Blair. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Rita. Once again, it's my pleasure, being with you for the last episode of this program.
And of course, it's always exciting because when we see the doc in the building, we are about to discuss everything that has to do with the farmer out there.
Oh, yes.
And so in case if you are a farmer or you know a farmer or intend to go into farming, this is the right place for you to be at and watch us, because excitingly, we've had very good previous episodes where we have discussed so many things. And as such, Doctor, for someone who did not watch the previous episode, what were we discussing in the previous episode?
Yes, thank you so much, our viewers, for all those that joined us in this Farm to Market Alliance with Conservation Farming Unit program. Last time we talked about understanding the sprayer.
Yeah.
After the past weeks, we talked about weed management. And under this word, weed management, it's essential for our farmers to understand the, component of a sprayer. How do they use a sprayer? And understanding the parts of the sprayer, because it is important, for them to, undertake, the spraying, of herbicides. And apart from that, after doing all the applications that are involved in the sprayer usage, the nozzles that are needed to be correctly fitted, for the spray exercise and so on. We talked about the nozzle, the orange nozzle and the blue nozzle, flat jet, nozzles, as opposed to horocon nozzles, which are for pests. We also went further, to talk about one of the critical aspects that is involved in spraying, and this is safety. Safety, very, very cardinal for our farmers, because we want them to live longer and also to do farming as a sustainable business. So we don't want any farmer to be harmed or to be intoxicated or to die because they didn't use these herbicides properly. And I emphasized so much on the usage of gramoxone or paraquat to say, this is not good for our farmers because the levels of toxicity are just too high. So our farmers should not use these herbicides, but use other alternatives. Though they are toxic, but they are good enough, in terms of helping, the sustainability, of the farming endeavors.
All right. Now, Doctor, in today's episode, we look at something that is mostly a thorn in the flesh of most of these farmers. And in today's episode, we're looking at pest management and post-harvest handling.
Yes.
Now, if you want there's no such thing as smooth farming,
No.
because you face hurdles as you go, and one of those hurdles are pests.
Yes.
So what are pests?
Thank you so much. From where we are coming from, talking about weed management
as well,
yes,
yeah.
Now we come over, to pest management. And when we are referring to pest, we are talking about any harmful or disastrous insects, that attack crops. Generally, pests do not only attack crops, they attack human beings, they attack livestock, they attack, many other, aspects, to do with human beings, animals, and mainly crops, because this is a subject that we are talking about today. And weeds may be, pests,
Yeah.
Because they're not wanted and they attack or hinder the growth, of crops. So we may talk about pathogens, plant pathogens, and these are diseases, that come as a result of bacteria, fungi, or any virus, that may attack, the crop. We may talk of nematodes, we may talk of any other, the rodents and so on. So all these are pests, that attack, our crops.
Now, in all of that, someone would say, but it's just the pest, let me leave it there. What are the effects of these pests specifically? Not the ones that also attack the humans, but the ones that attack the crops. What effect do they leave on the crops?
Farm to Market Alliance and Conservation Farming Unity, they are so much interested in the yield, of any given crop. And when we are looking at this pest management, the effects of these pests on the crop has to do with the stunted growth, or they slow the growth of any crop. when the field is attacked, the growth will be, slow. And also that will cause, diseases, to any crop, like leaf spot, wilting of rusty, and all that, on the crop. And not only that, you discover that this pest may attack not only the crop that is standing. When you allow the pest, to multiply, you see that they will even attack, the crop that is stored, that is under storage, and so on. So, in a nutshell, this will cause losses. And if it causes losses to a farmer, meaning even the income will be low. And this is one thing that we are encouraging our farmers to say, when you are a farmer, ensure that you know how to deal with these pests that attack our crops.
Right. Now, so you have mentioned the effects, and that's something that a farmer should not want to face, because then that will mean low yields, as you have alluded to. But then, how do farmers then control these pests that have been attacking their crops?
Yes, there are so many ways of how farmers can, deal, with this situation. And I believe that out there, the extension officers, both private and also the government officers, are versed with this information and training to our farmers on how to deal, with this situation. There is what we call integrated pest management approach. That gives guidance on how farmers should deal, when they find themselves in that situation. First of all, they have to understand the activity of that pest. Because not every pest, that is harmful. There's then a pest that will attack another pest, which is helpful, to managing, pests, infection in a particular field. So a farmer should be able to identify pests that destroy any crop in the field. It could be maize crop, it could be soya, it could be any other given field. So a farmer should understand, first of all, the activity of that pest. And before taking any measures, because the spraying exercise should be the last resort, farmers should understand the threshold. We call the threshold. How many pests are in that particular field? So we undertake that kind of exercise to check in the field at least 20 different portions. Around the 20 different portions, a farmer could check at least 10 plants, in that field, or the farmer could undertake, 10, checking 10 plants at any given point and check how many of those pests are there. And if they reach the threshold, this is how a farmer would come in now to do, the spraying. But if you remember where we are coming from, there are other cultural methods that would help a farmer to curb, this kind of a situation or control a pest in the field. And it has to do with the management of the field itself. Coming from land preparation. So farmers who prepare land early, like using minimum tillage and also crop rotation. Because certain, pests that are susceptible, to a particular, crop. For example, if it is maize, when a farmer rotates with the soya, it will cut that generation, kind of multiplication, for example, multiplication, of those pests. For example, if it was the maize, pests that attack, so much of maize, now you change to another crop, you cut. That kind of multiplication of pests. So there are different ways in terms of ensuring that the nutritional level of the field is attained, and you discover that a farmer will have less, pests in that particular field. And there are also other means like physical, kind of approach where farmers will make guards or barriers, from the field of the neighbor that is infected to where they are, and so on. So those are also areas, guards, areas that will help to keep the field hygiene, hygienic in terms of cleanness, in terms of weeding, management, and so. So all these are areas that are helpful before a farmer comes with the last resort of using herbicides. Right. Pesticides.
Exactly. When you look at some of these crops, they are also attacked with diseases. Now, let's get down to breaking down the diseases that really affect the crops. So what diseases affect the crops, and how then can you help in terms of ensuring that the impact of this is not as bad as it could get in terms of the diseases?
Yes, there are so many diseases, and some of these diseases are referred to as fungal, diseases, and they affect different crops, differently. So these are caused by bacterial or viral, infections. And when we look at maize, also we have what we call mosaic, mosaic and streak, diseases that attack, the maize field. And you see other crops that will have maybe brown spots or dumping off seedlings and so on, because there are other farmers who do vegetables, like horticulture and so on. So this is a wide range of attack. It's not only on many crops like maize, soya and so on, but even in the vegetables, the horticulture kind of industry, you'll find that these are there. So they damage, most of the crops, and also need to ensure that our farmers understand the different diseases and pests that attack different crops.
All right, so let's take one of the diseases for an example. You could choose any of the ones that you have mentioned and maybe give the farmer an idea on how they can handle it if they are faced with that type of a disease on their crop.
Yes, let me give an example of the main crops that we have. For example, maize, where I talked of mosaic that will attack the diseases or streak diseases and so on, attacking the crop, meaning it will siphon the growth of that particular crop. And what will happen in a nutshell is that the farmer will lose out. So what farmers need to do is that there are fungicides, just as there are pesticides that are there to protect, for protection or to cure any kind of diseases that are affecting any crop. So farmers should go, to the agro dealers, and they'll be able to advise them, the suitable pesticides or the suitable herbicides or the suitable, fungicides that they can use, to attack that crop. So generally, the farmer should be able to understand, because they are managers of their own fields. So they should understand, the crop management. How is the crop looking? And is there any, pest in that field? If they note anything happening, siphoning the growth of the crop, then they can come in and, apply. These are fungicides or pesticides.
Is there any other natural way that the farmer can fight off these diseases with their crops?
Yes, they are there. And you find, there are different kind of approaches that are taken, by farmers, because there are other farmers who don't want to use these, pesticides and fungicides and so on. But mainly others will use even chili to attack, to protect, their fields, or to attack, some of these pests and so on. In the other field of conservation farming, we have the I think it's the Kasisi, who do with the organic farming. They've own their own way, of doing things. But culturally, like I mentioned on, even conservation kind of tillage, and the practices that conservation farming teaches farmers helps our farmers, to keep, pests, infections in their field, like in terms of minimum tillage, crop rotation, residue retention, and all that. But our farmers should be able to use all these methods and ensure that, their fields are not susceptible, to these pests. And the other thing that I should mention is that, the technology is improving. And when the technology is improving, we have our stakeholders, the seed companies, who are providing, seeds that are tested, tested seeds. And these seeds, are protected in such a way that they don't, it's not easily, for these diseases to attack, such kind of a crop. So we advise our farmers to say it's important to use treated seed and to avoid some of these attacks.
As opposed to just simply saying, instead you go and get the right treated seed.
Yes, please.
Which is something that, is very important to note by the farmers. Now let's get to the post-harvest stage in this farming. What are the post-harvest losses that a farmer can encounter?
Thank you, Rita. This is one of the intervention of Conservation Farming Unity and Farm to Market Alliance mandate to ensure that we train our farmers on post losses, because this has to do with the supply chain, food supply chain. You know, you discover that from the harvesting to consumption, you know, maybe, you know, the crop that a farmer has stored, you know, lose weight. You understand? Or it's attacked, you know, by any other pest, or the quality of the seed or whatever it is that the farmer has stored, you know, has lost its viability and so on. So all these are commercial losses that come, you know, through, you know, post-harvest losses. And one thing that you need to understand, Rita, is that our smallholder farmers contribute about 80% of food production. And out of this 80%, 30% of the food produced, you know, go through post-harvest, you understand, losses. Because our farmers do not take keen interest in ensuring that, you know, they preserve, you know, the crops and understand ways of how to keep, you know, this kind of a situation.
All right. Now, how then, what is the impact of this post-harvest loss on the farmer?
Mainly, we are talking about loss of income. Loss of income. And apart from loss of income from the farm, because we're talking all the time, this is the message that we are preaching to farmers, to say farming is business. And if farming is business, it has to give income, it has to be sustainable, so that you can do it, you know, for a longer period. So you discover that there will be even food insecurity in such a way when there are post-harvest losses. There will be food insecurity because the food will not be, you know, enough. And also the nutrition levels, you know, of food that is produced will not be enough. So what we are saying is that there are so many impacts or losses that, I mean, effects that come, you know, with post-harvest losses.
All right. So then, you know, the impact, as you have outlined it already. Now, what can be done to avoid this, to avert these losses for the farmer?
Thank you so much, Rita. You know, probably before I answer that question, you know, one thing that we need to understand, what causes these post-harvest losses? You know, it comes from planning, you know, poor planning. There are so many areas that, you know, come with post-harvest losses. Planning, because you discover, like we discussed in previous discussions, to say, you know, a farmer will just plant maize and they don't plan for probably pesticides. They don't plan for herbicides. They don't plan for, you know, any eventuality that they may come along the way. So they will say that fika is over if you understand, and so on. You wonder it as it comes, you know, such kind of thing. So farmers should plan ahead, so that when they plan ahead, they will be able, you know, to have, you know, certain precautions that they will take prior to planting that particular crop. And also, general management of the crop, you know, is essential, you know, other than late planting of crops. And this will cause, you know, a lot of weeds, you know, pests and diseases and so on. The type of seed, like I mentioned, also lack of adequate or soil nutrition to the soil, you know. These are major causes of these post-harvest losses. And I believe that to avert this situation, we need the intervention of us, you know, like extension officers, the frontliners, you know, who are there, you know, training our farmers on how they can improve yields. We need to train our farmers. You know, it's very cardinal to train our farmers to understand the areas where these losses are. It's very sad, you know, Rita, for us people who've been in the field. When you go and check the field that has been harvested, you find a lot of spillage there. A lot of leftovers, you know, some crops will remain, you know, some seeds of maize will remain, or any other crop. But when you count those seeds, you know, it's a loss. You understand? Maybe a bag or two bags in a particular, you know, lima or you know, a lima or hectare and so on. It's a loss. And these are certain things that we need to avoid. Even as we train our farmers as Conservation Farming Unit and Farm to Market Alliance on areas of marketing, we need to ensure that these stages, you know, are talked about, these areas are talked about, and farmers understand to say they need to avoid post-harvest losses by all means, by ensuring that they use the right packages, where they are storing, what is the temperature like. If they applied, certain chemicals, that will kill, the aphids on the ground, if they are keeping on the grounds, if they heard, about the pig bugs, that cardinal where farmers will be able to package, their maize seed and so on and so forth. So these are certain things that we need to highlight to our farmers.
Now, farmers mostly are prepared to buy the seeds, the fertilizer, and all that they might need in terms of the growth of their either maize or their crop. But something that I have come to notice is when you're doing the planning, they do not plan for things like the herbicide, the pesticide that they might need.
Yes.
In terms of the work that you do as the Conservation Farming Unit and the Farm to Market Alliance,
yes,
what have you done in terms of financial understanding?
Yes, please.
To ensure, because at the end of the day, when you're financially sound, you make the right decisions and plan financially for such things as even the losses. What have you done to ensure that these farmers are financially literate?
Thank you so much. And starting from 2017, 2018, coming down to 2020, 2021, Conservation Farming Unity, has done a lot in terms of sensitizing our farmers on budgeting and the importance of financial, literacy. We've used the GIZ, has supported us with the material, and most of our staff, all our staff and the lead farmers, we call them farmer coordinators, we are trained in this aspect so that our farmers in our catchment areas understand these important aspects. And I believe even Farm to Market Alliance took it over from there, whereby in coming months, like I mentioned, other partners that will come through, to take over the areas where we've been operating from, they'll be training our farmers on, post-harvest losses or, post-harvest handling, so that our farmers understand what is needed in this kind of arrangement or to avert losses that come through poor handling of post-harvest. And also we train our farmers on budgeting. We trained our farmers as CFU on budgeting prior to the planting sessions, so that our farmers plan ahead before they start preparing land and before they start buying or procuring any imports or seedlings and so on.
Right. Now, just at the beginning of this program, we did mention and highlight that this episode seemingly happens to be our last in some of the topics that we wanted to highlight to the farmers. Now, I know the Farm to Market Alliance already has its period on what it's doing, and we have spoken about the sustainability it has. Now, before we even get to your last remarks on this episode, let's just get to the Conservation Farming Unity, or Mr. Collins, who also bring in an aspect of a roundup of this alliance and how much it has been done, so that way you know that the impact is being felt on the ground. Let's just get to him shortly.
In this particular program, we are focusing on the role that the Conservation Farming Unit is playing in the program called Farm to Market Alliance. This is an alliance of agricultural sector players, private sector players that are both in the input and output markets. A program that tries to facilitate the linkages of these players to the farmers in different areas of Zambia. The program is financed by the Norwegian government through the World Food Program and managed by Farm to Market Alliance unit. The CFU's role is to link those productive farmers in the outskirts of former markets, trying to bring them closer to the suppliers of software and hardware on the input side and to the off-takers on the output side. This year we started a program in Central Region, which includes parts of Lusaka Province, Central Province and the Copperbelt Province in 12 districts, to try and make it easy for farmers with a crop to reach the interested buyers. So our focus has been to make it easier for the private sector players to take a crop which they would not normally follow. So the approach we've used is to use our lead farmer system to set up what we call aggregators. So the farmers in a particular area would then put the crop together at one aggregator, and then when there is enough bulk, then it becomes attractive to the private sector players to go and buy that crop. We started with the maize value chain this time around, but our intention is to expand first to include other value chains in these districts, and secondly to include other provinces in the program. We have already done a scoping study for Southern Province, and we've done another scoping study for Eastern Province with a view to increasing the presence and the footprint of the Farm to Market Alliance program, and also to expand the value chains that we're dealing with. We're thinking of including legumes, because as a conservation farming unit, we have a non-negotiable in the promotion on the production side of legumes in the rotation. So we will be taking on legumes, soybeans in some areas, groundnuts in areas where they are more produced, and also common beans and cowpeas. So that is the program that we're running at the moment. We had targeted to reach 17,000 farmers, but we have exceeded that by almost twofold. We are targeted to offtake 50,000 tons of maize, but we have exceeded that by more than 10 tons. So we're very excited about linking farmers who would otherwise have difficulties getting their crop to the market, and the private sector are happy to get an easy way of getting bulk produce in hard to reach areas. So thank you very much, and we look forward to expanding into Eastern and expanding the number of value chains that we'll be dealing with. We'd like to thank the private sector players, Syngenta, Bayer, Yara, Sitco, Cotiva, and whoever wants to come on board to ensure that we get that part of the input side, and also the off-takers like the millers, the feed manufacturers, and the other businessmen on the output side.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. And that was Mr. Collins in Katiko, who was just giving us, a roundup of what really has been happening in terms of the Farm to Market Alliance, which is also being spearheaded with a partnership with the Conservation Farming Unit. And, on this episode, we have been discussing pest management and post-harvest handling in terms of the farmer. Now, I know good things, they say all good things must come to an end, and this is where our episode is coming to an end. But before we do our wrap up and say our goodbyes, Doctor, what are your remarks in terms of pest management and post-harvest handling to the farmer out there?
What I may advise our farmers is that let them take a keen interest, in understanding what these things are involved. I mean, what it means, and how they should behave. Losses at every point of production, because for us to market our crops and to have the maximum yields, we need to understand these processes that we've talked about from the beginning of this program. And also, being the last program, may I take this opportunity, to thank, KNC Radio, for giving us this platform, to share this information, to our farmers for the weeks that we've been broadcasting our programs sponsored by CSU and Conservation Farming Unity, as well as Farm to Market Alliance. And we thank also our farmers who are following us, in these deliberations.
You must note that, Doctor, this is both KNC Radio and TV.
Wow! Yes, KNC Radio, and TV. And also, may I thank also our sponsors for this program, like I mentioned earlier on, Farm to Market Alliance, and for giving this privilege to Conservation Farming Unity to do the pilot project. We are calling upon other partners to come through and to support Conservation Farming Unity. It has the technical people, and the record is there in the region to support our farmers in resilient farming methods. So we request all our partners who are there to support CSU financially, materially, and ensure that we continue serving our people.
All right, and there you have it. It has been an information show, and we have given to you all that you need to know as a farmer. Now, of course, we're looking forward to more of such episodes and more of such topics. I have been your host, Rita Maluita, from me and the entire production team. It's pleasant viewing.